How a paralyzed baby found hope through the most unexpected companion. Welcome to our channel, where every story brings a little more hope into the world. We're so glad you're here. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? We love seeing how our community stretches across the globe. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because tomorrow we'll share another special story you won't want to miss. Thank you for being a part of our journey. We can't wait to see you again. Mason's story began in a way no parent ever expects. Born prematurely at just 28 weeks, he entered the world in a small hospital deep in the heart of Texas. He weighed barely 2 pounds, and when he arrived, he wasn't breathing. For a moment, time itself seemed to stand still. The medical team rushed into action, working desperately to bring him back, to coax the fragile spark of life into his tiny body. Against the odds, they succeeded. Mason gasped his first breath, a sound so small, yet so powerful that it brought his parents, Emily and Jake, to tears. But the victory was only the beginning of a much larger battle. Doctors soon discovered that Mason had suffered severe complications. His body was weakened, and the entire right side was paralyzed. Simple movements that most newborns perform, instinctively, grasping a finger, kicking a leg, were impossible for Mason. Emily and Jake refused to give up. For the first 3 months of Mason's life, they became warriors in the truest sense. They traveled over 200 miles back and forth between hospitals, specialists, and therapy centers. Every day was a new consultation, a new scan, a new glimmer of hope that seemed to fade just as quickly. Each night they returned home exhausted, only to rise the next morning and start all over again. Friends and family tried to offer encouragement, but deep inside, Emily and Jake wrestled with fear and helplessness. Would their little boy ever be able to move freely? Would he ever walk, or run, or play with his sisters the way they had always dreamed? The therapies were grueling. The exercises designed to stimulate Mason's muscles left him crying in frustration, and there were days when progress seemed invisible. Still, they pressed on, clinging to the belief that somewhere, somehow, a breakthrough would come. They set up a small therapy space right in their living room, filling it with colorful mats, tiny weights, and a dozen different tools meant to encourage Mason's movement. Jake built special support frames by hand, determined to do everything he could. Emily read every article she could find, joining online forums, attending every parent group within driving distance. Their lives revolved around hope, a stubborn, fierce hope that refused to be extinguished, and yet despite all their effort, by Mason's 3rd month, there was little improvement. His body remained stiff and unresponsive on the right side, and doctors began to lower their expectations. The couple faced an agonizing truth. Traditional medicine might not be enough. It was during one of those heartbreaking appointments that a neurologist, a man who had seen thousands of cases, leaned across his desk and said something that would change everything. "You need to get him a dog," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. Not a suggestion, a prescription. Emily and Jake could hardly believe what they were hearing. A dog, with 3 small children under 6 years old already. It sounded impossible, but deep down, something stirred, a feeling they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the miracle they had been waiting for. After months of tireless fighting, Emily and Jake found themselves sitting in yet another sterile hospital office, hearts heavy, hope wearing thin. The neurologist on call that day was an older man, seasoned by decades of experience, his eyes kind but sharp. He listened carefully as they poured out Mason's story, the endless hospital visits, the failed therapies, the growing fear gnawing at their spirits. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen thoughtfully against the desk. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Then, he spoke words they could never have anticipated. "You need to get him a dog," he said plainly. "A Chow or a Labrador, Emily blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. A dog? They were barely managing 3 kids under 6 years old. Their days were already a whirlwind of doctor visits, therapy sessions, sleepless nights, and endless worry. Jake, ever practical, leaned forward and asked, "Are you serious? How could a dog possibly help?" The neurologist smiled. Not a soft, uncertain smile, but one of deep certainty. "This isn't a suggestion," he said firmly. "It's an order." He explained that in cases like Mason's, emotional stimulation and tactile interaction could awaken neural pathways that medicine and traditional therapy simply couldn't reach. A dog's natural instincts, the way they nudge, lick, press against the body, could stimulate Mason's paralyzed side in ways no machine ever could. Still, the idea seemed outrageous. How could they add a puppy, a living, breathing ball of chaos, into their already fragile world? Driving home that night, the car was unusually quiet. The girls, usually chattering nonstop in the back seat, sensed the tension in the air. Emily stared out the window, her mind racing. Jake gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Both were afraid of getting their hopes up again, afraid of investing what little strength they had left into another gamble. But somewhere between the hospital and home, a decision was made without a word spoken. They both knew it in their hearts. They couldn't afford not to try. The very next morning, they began calling local breeders, shelters, anyone who might have a Chow Chow or Labrador puppy available. Most places had waiting lists months long, but by sheer luck, or perhaps something greater, they found a breeder just 30 miles away who had one last female Chow Chow left, 3 months old, golden brown, and already nicknamed Bella. Without hesitation, they packed the kids into the SUV and made the trip. When they arrived, Bella bounded toward them, all fuzzy fur and clumsy paws. She licked Mason's hand the moment she met him, his paralyzed hand. Jake and Emily looked at each other. It wasn't just coincidence. It felt like destiny. Little did they know, Bella was about to change Mason's life, and theirs, forever. The moment Bella entered their home, something shifted. Something, unseen but deeply felt. Emily set her down gently on the living room floor, and the girls squealed with excitement, their little feet pounding across the hardwood. They immediately tried to scoop Bella up, hugging and cuddling her, laughing uncontrollably. But Bella wasn't interested in them. Instead, she turned, almost, as if pulled by some invisible thread, and made her way across the room, straight to Mason. He was lying on a colorful therapy mat, bundled in a soft blanket, one tiny arm curled tightly against his chest. Bella approached cautiously at first, sniffing him gently, her warm breath tickling his face. Then, in a move that left Jake and Emily frozen in shock, Bella began to nibble, soft, persistent nibbles, right on the paralyzed side of Mason's body. At first, Emily jumped forward instinctively, ready to pull her away. Was she hurting him? Was this safe? But Jake stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Wait," he whispered. "Look." Mason, who normally flinched and cried at even the lightest touch during therapy sessions, wasn't upset at all. His face stayed calm, almost curious, his big blue eyes following the little ball of fluff that gnawed gently at his arm. Then his leg. Bella was focused. It wasn't the wild, playful biting of a typical puppy. It was different, targeted, deliberate, almost therapeutic. Hours turned into days, and every morning when Bella woke up, she made a beeline for Mason. She would ooze at him, lick him, tug at his tiny fingers with her mouth, always on the weaker side. It was as if she knew exactly what needed attention. At first, Jake and Emily worried what the doctors would think. They were already overwhelmed with therapy appointments and strict medical regimens. Introducing a dog into Mason's care plan would surely raise eyebrows, but something inside them said to trust it, to trust Bella. When their physical therapist arrived for the next scheduled visit, she stood in stunned silence as she watched Bella at work. After a few moments, she simply shook her head and said, "I can't compete with that. She's doing real acupressure." better than any of us could. It wasn't just Mason's body that Bella seemed to reach. It was his spirit, too. The once quiet, withdrawn little boy started to giggle when Bella climbed onto his lap, or when she tugged gently at his socks with her teeth. His fingers, which once lay limp and unmoving, began to twitch and grasp at her soft fur. Jake and Emily watched in awe, barely daring to breathe. This wasn't the kind of healing you found in textbooks or therapy manuals. It was raw, pure, and real. And deep down, they both knew. Bella wasn't just a pet. She was a miracle in disguise. Word about Mason's unexpected therapy dog spread faster than Emily and Jake ever anticipated. Family members, friends, even neighbors would stop by just to see the tiny boy and his fluffy healer at work. But not everyone understood what they were witnessing. When Mason's regular physical therapist, Miss Caroline, came for her weekly session, she was skeptical. She walked into the living room, clipboard in hand, expecting to find Mason lying stiffly on his mat, the way he always had before. Instead, she found Bella, all 15 pounds of her, nestled against Mason's side, gently gnawing and pawing at his once paralyzed arm. Caroline frowned. "What's going on here?" she asked, clearly uneasy. Emily hesitated for a moment, then explained everything. The neurologist's advice, Bella's strange but careful attention to Mason, the tiny improvements they had seen. Caroline knelt down beside them, watching. Closely, she reached out, lightly touching Mason's hand, and was stunned to feel a slight, almost imperceptible grasp of her finger. Her professional instincts kicked in immediately, and she began assessing Mason's muscle tone, his reflexes, his reaction to Bella's touch. After a few long moments, Caroline sat back on her heels, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't match this," she admitted. "That dog is doing real acupressure. And she's hitting exactly the right points. No human could replicate it as naturally." Jake and Emily exchanged wide-eyed looks. It was one thing for them to believe in Bella's magic, but hearing it confirmed by a medical professional felt like validation they hadn't even realized they needed. Caroline, to her credit, didn't resist. Instead of insisting on doubling therapy sessions as she had originally planned, she adjusted her entire approach. She focused on supporting Bella's work, guiding Mason's new movements, and helping him strengthen the connections that were clearly beginning to form. Over the next few weeks, the changes became undeniable. Mason, once frozen and limp on his right side, began making small but consistent movements. He would wiggle his fingers, lift his arms slightly when Bella nudged him, even kick his leg toward her when she pawed at his toes. Each little action was a celebration, each tiny victory a sign that something miraculous was happening beneath the surface. And Bella, sweet, tireless Bella, never missed a session. Morning, noon, and night, she was there by Mason's side, working without complaint, without instruction, guided by nothing more than pure instinct and love. Emily often found herself crying quietly in the kitchen, overwhelmed by gratitude. Jake, once the most skeptical, built Bella a special sleeping space right next to Mason's therapy mat, complete with a soft bed and her favorite chew toys. They had gone searching for a miracle, and found one wrapped in golden fur. And little did they know, the biggest miracle was still yet to come. One crisp morning, just as the Texas sun was starting to filter through the living room windows, it happened. Emily was sitting nearby, sipping her coffee, while Bella worked her usual magic, nudging, licking, tugging at Mason's fingers with gentle persistence. It had become part of their daily rhythm, so familiar that Emily almost didn't notice. Until Mason did something he had never done before. He lifted both of his tiny arms, not just the stronger one, but both, reaching toward Bella with an unmistakable determination. For a second, Emily froze, unsure if she had really seen it. Then, Jake, who had just walked in from the kitchen, gasped loud enough to startle even Bella. "Mason! You did it, buddy!" Jake shouted, dropping to his knees beside them. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, blurring her vision as Mason let out a giggle, a bright ringing sound they hadn't heard in so long. Bella barked once, wagging her fluffy tail so hard she nearly knocked herself over. It wasn't just a fluke. Over the next few days, Mason's newfound strength grew. With Bella by his side, he began grasping her fur tighter, pushing himself up little by little, rolling from his back to his stomach with clumsy but determined effort. Bella instinctively adapted her methods, just like a mother teaching her own pups. She would nudge Mason's side when he wobbled, encouraging him to correct himself. If he fell backward, she'd gently paw at him until he tried again. Within weeks, Mason was crawling, not perfectly, but moving under his own power for the very first time. By the time he reached 14 months old, he wasn't just crawling. He was pulling himself up onto the couch, taking wobbly steps toward Bella as she patiently waited just a few feet away, her eyes bright and full of encouragement. The doctors were stunned. They ran test after test, trying to understand how a boy, who had shown almost no voluntary movement just a few months earlier, was now cruising across furniture and laughing like any healthy toddler. There were no easy medical explanations. Every chart, every scan, every professional opinion pointed to the same conclusion. Mason's recovery was nothing short of a miracle. Jake and Emily knew exactly where the credit belonged. To Bella, the little Chow with a heart bigger than Texas itself. To Mason, the fierce little fighter who refused to give up. And to Faith, the stubborn, wild belief that sometimes miracles come in forms we don't expect. Today, Mason runs across their backyard with Bella chasing at his heels, both of them full of life, full of joy. Their bond is unbreakable, forged in a battle that neither of them could have fought alone, and every time Emily watches them together, she smiles through tears, knowing one simple truth. Sometimes, love really does heal. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Mason and Bella's incredible journey. Have you ever witnessed a moment where love, instinct, and hope created a miracle? Share your story in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else who's holding on to hope today. Tell us where you're watching from too. It's amazing to see how stories like this can connect people across every corner of the world. Whether you're a parent, a dog lover, or simply someone who believes in the power of perseverance, we'd love to hear what this story meant to you. Do you believe animals can sense when humans need healing? Have you ever experienced something like what Mason's family went through? Your voice matters here. Every comment helps build a community of encouragement, kindness, and shared belief in second chances. Don't forget to hit that like button if this story touched your heart, and subscribe so you don't miss the next beautiful story coming tomorrow. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey with us.